Hey comic book lovers and self-aware robots, thank you for tuning in to another video. Today we're going to be taking a look at Self-Made Volume 1, which is actually the first and only book in this series. So I'll be doing a review of the book and then looking at a few things that I thought were particularly interesting from a Christian worldview perspective. So let's go. When chaos besieges the kingdom of Arcadia, warrior Amala Satali uncovers a shocking truth. She's a non-player character in an advanced video game. With her very existence at stake, Amala embarks on a journey across worlds to escape her prison, find her creator, and demand answers to the fundamental questions of her existence. Self-Made is an intimate story of self-discovery that takes readers to lands of high fantasy, futuristic science fiction, and beyond. Hey, my name is Tyler, and welcome to Pages of Light, where we analyze literature from a Christian worldview. If that sounds like something that you're into, make sure you hit the subscribe button down below so you don't miss any new videos. Like I said earlier, we're going to be looking at Self-Made Volume 1. It was written by Matt Groom. The art is by Eduardo Ferragato, and the colors are by Marcelo Costa. It came out in May of 2019, but I actually read it as it came out in issue format, and then I got the trade paperback shortly after that, and I really liked it, so decided to do a video on it, even though it's been a few months or years since it came out, depending on when you're watching this. Alright, so we'll look at some of the individual chapters, and then I'll give you my perspective on a few Christian worldview things that I thought were interesting. So let's go. So in the first chapter, we get introduced to the main characters that will follow through the course of the story. So we have Amala, who is the video game character, and she is all about honor and duty and searching for the truth. Yet there's a scene in the game where she doesn't speak her mind about a particular battle that's going to be happening. Because she doesn't speak up, that kind of leads to their demise. Next, we have the character of Bryce, who meets Amala in the video game where he goes by Brycemere instead of his normal name of Bryce. So he's kind of the selfish, hot-headed character who doesn't really think about other people at all. He's kind of only in it for himself, as it were. Lastly, we have Rebecca, who is the computer coder. She creates characters for the video game, and Amala is one of the characters that she has created. And so she is kind of the idealist in terms of her wanting to make the next big innovation in AI, or artificial intelligence. So she wants to make her characters sentient so that they can make their own decisions in the game or even in the real world. But the problem with this is because she's so idealistic and so driven to this goal that she doesn't really think about what this will do with the company that she's actually working for, like with the characters that she's making in the games, or how it will affect the world as a whole. Very early in the comic, we get the idea of fate mentioned, fate versus free will. There's a general who is talking to all of the soldiers in this battle, and he's saying that the gods have chosen you to be here for this specific purpose. So this idea will be explored throughout the book. Are Amala's decisions that of fate, or is she choosing her own decisions? So the whole first chapter is all about Bryce and Rebecca discovering that Amala is not following the code correctly. She's making choices that are contrary to that. So she might kill Bryce in a particular way, or she'll say something differently than what she's supposed to. And so they kind of experiment as to why this could be happening. The idea of free will is frequently discussed in Christian circles. So the question is, did God choose everyone who's going to be saved, or do people make their own choice to either follow or reject God? I've heard popular apologist Frank Turek use the analogy of humans being moist robots, and they're a moist robot if there's no free will, because none of their decisions are actually made by their own volition. From my perspective, love requires a freedom to choose. Otherwise, it's just pre-programming. Either God programs us to choose him, or he programs us to reject him. I'm not expecting to solve the fate versus free will or the predestination issue in this video, but we can have some discussions down in the comments, so let me know down there. In chapter 2, we get to see some of the experimentation that Rebecca is doing with her characters. So there's a scenario where the character has to shoot the player in order to stop themselves from being killed, because there's a bomb with a timer that's counting down. And we see one character who just can't do it, and he's freaking out, and he can't because he can't pull the trigger because of his coding, that he can't kill players. And then we see Amala go through the same scenario, and she has no problem. She just picks up the gun and says, "Are you committed to this course of action?" "Yes." Bang. And so this is kind of a dead giveaway that Amala is not following the code that she was designed with. So we get a scene with Rebecca talking to a colleague about the problem, and they realize that it's Rebecca's code that is the source of the issue, because she's been working on creating sentient AI and trying to make the characters as lifelike as possible. And in that pursuit, she's done something with Amala's code where she's broken the rules, essentially, where she shouldn't have been able to do so. After this, Rebecca decides that she needs to confront Amala herself and ask her own questions. So she takes the form of a dragon, which she thinks will scare Amala and get some raw emotions out of her. So she asks why she stopped Bryce from completing the game, and she said because it was the right thing to do, which gives you an idea that she has some kind of morality. And then she asks who she is or what she is, and she says she's just a person, which makes Rebecca feel like that she's actually created somebody who has sentient abilities, like she understands who she is and what she is. The creation of Amala is shown to be an accident, and Rebecca has to figure out how and why it happened and how she can fix it. The title for Volume 1 is actually called The Inciting Accident. And in our world today, people think that we have evolved over millions of years into the mammals that we are today, instead of that we were created by a being. As Christians, we know that God created us male and female in his own image. He gave us our sense of morality, our sense of right and wrong, because he is the author of what is right in this world. In Luke chapter 12, we see Jesus talking to his disciples, and he says, "Even the hairs of your head are all numbered. Fear not, you are of more value than many sparrows." So our creation wasn't an accident, and God knows everything about us, the numbers of hairs on our head, and all of the cells in our body. In the third chapter, we get Amala's final test to see if she is actually sentient and not just a piece of rogue code. And so they decide to put her in a new location to see if it was just that location that was the problem, or if it's actually her character code that is the problem. This final test is going to be a co-op mission with Amala and Rebecca against Bryce, who is playing the Ghost King and all of his skeleton minions, and it's just a fight to the death, so whoever is last standing is the one who wins. And I presume that Amala wouldn't normally be able to win this because of her coding, so if she can win, then that would prove that she can defy her code. So Rebecca and Amala are dropped into this game, and they're trying to escape all of these minions to try and work out a plan. And in the process, Rebecca gets wounded. She gets stabbed by one of the minions. And so this wouldn't hurt her in real life, but her character body is going to die eventually. So it kind of is all up to Amala now to win the game. And by the way, the art in this issue is just really spectacular. The picture and the character of the Ghost King is just really well done. Eduardo and Marcelo did a really awesome job. I'll put a picture of it right here. It's pretty epic. Throughout this chapter and this game that they're playing, Amala is struggling to understand her existence because she finds herself in a new location that's not Arcadia, and she doesn't really understand why that is. And so Rebecca's trying to explain it to her, but she doesn't really believe Rebecca just because she doesn't have enough sources of information to confirm what she's saying. So she decides that she's going to go talk to Bryce because she actually knows who Bryce is from previously meeting him in the first chapter. And so she goes to talk to the Ghost King, who is played by Bryce, to confront him and get the answers that she's looking for. And, Bryce tells her everything that Rebecca told her. So she's now inclined to believe him. And because of this, she pushes the button on a grenade, and she self-detonates, and everybody explodes. And because Rebecca is still alive, back where Amala had left her, she wins the game. When Amala realizes that she is nothing more than computer code and she's not an actual person, this made me think of how people today can kind of lose their own purpose in life when they reject the things of God and they're pursuing their own purposes, or that what they think they will find purpose in. And so we can put our stock in anything of this world but it's not really going to fully satisfy us. We actually see Jesus talking about our purpose in life when he talks about the greatest commandment in Matthew 22. So we read, and starting in verse 34, "But when the Pharisees heard that he had silenced the Sadducees, they gathered together, and one of them, a lawyer, asked him a question to test him. 'Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law?' And he said to him, 'You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the greatest and first commandment, and the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments depend all the law and the prophets.'" After Amala and Rebecca pass the test, Rebecca gets fired from the company because of the problems that she's caused there and the mess that's going to be to clean up. And then Bryce takes Amala's device, which essentially houses her brain, and he throws it on the ground, destroys it. So Amala picks up the pieces. She has to leave the building with the rest of her things. And she's on this kind of quest to fix Amala and to bring her into the real world and give her an actual physical body. So after this, we get a bit of a time jump, and we see Rebecca with Amala's new fixed brain, and she's putting it into a state-of-the-art service bot, which is essentially used for people in their homes as like servants to get them coffee and do things around the house. So Amala is getting this new body, and she wakes up, and Rebecca is already kind of like focused on the next project, so she doesn't really do a good job of welcoming Amala into the world and like showing her where she is, who she is, all these different things. And so Amala's kind of disoriented a little bit. And so Rebecca's friend who is living with her, his name's James, he decides to take her out on a walk and kind of explore the city and kind of allow Amala to get her bearings in this new place that she finds herself in. And while they're doing that, they're confronted by this apparently another android who looks like Amala, and Amala thinks that they're out to get her, and so she attacks this person. Somebody calls the police, and now they're kind of on the run. So now they're on the run, and Amala and James split up because they're not really looking for James. They're looking for Amala, and Rebecca finds them because she installed a tracking chip into Amala so that if she got stolen somehow, she'd be able to find her again. And so Rebecca takes Amala in her car, and they kind of drive off, and the police are chasing them. They crash, unfortunately, and then they're able to escape down in some sewers below the ground. And this is where Amala and Rebecca kind of have a heart-to-heart discussion about Amala, who she is, and what she's made for. And then it's clear to Amala that Rebecca doesn't really have a plan for her. Amala, I think, is treating Rebecca as some kind of like God, a creator, and she's looking to Rebecca to kind of give her purpose in life. And whenever Rebecca tells her that, there is no purpose for you, I just created you, and there's not like a grand plan that you're going to be following, Amala just decides to leave and go her own way. And she decides that she's going to try and find Rebecca's creator and find an exit from this supposed simulation in the real world. So in this chapter, we kind of have a comparison between Rebecca and God, or as a creator. And Rebecca is a bit selfish about most things in her life. She's only really looking out for her own interests, and she doesn't really have a plan for Amala, the person that she created. And Amala doesn't really appreciate this, and she kind of gives it back to Rebecca. And then Rebecca kind of gets a bit arrogant about creating her whenever Amala doesn't give her the respect that she thinks that she deserves. But on the contrary, God does have a plan for every single one of us, even if we ourselves might not know it yet. So it's no wonder that Amala leaves Rebecca, because Amala realizes that there's nothing from Rebecca that she needs. She can go on her own way and she'll be fine. So in this situation, we as humans are sort of like Amala, who are rejecting their creator. And Amala has a good reason to reject Rebecca, but we do not have a good reason to reject our own creator. We read in Romans 1 how God gives man over to his own desires, just like Rebecca is kind of, washing her hands of Amala, saying, if you go down this path, I'm not going to be able to protect you anymore. I'm just going to have to let you go. And Amala is fine with this. The only difference is Rebecca is an imperfect human creator, whereas God is a perfect supernatural creator who is worthy of our respect and obedience. In chapter 5, we see another little bit of time pass, and we see Amala looking for somebody who has potentially found an escape from the simulation, and we're introduced to Raphael, who is this person, and he lives with the regret of not going with the love of his life on this adventure into the unknown, but it seems like he's struggling a lot because he doesn't know if she will ever actually return, and he's just kind of waiting for her to come back. So Amala meets Raphael and tells her story about how she's been selling parts of herself to get information about how to escape the simulation. And this, I think, can help Amala empathize with Rebecca about how Rebecca had sacrificed so much to bring her into existence. And Raphael tells her that the device that they created would potentially work with Amala because her brain is based on the brain of a human. After a little bit of time of Amala and Raphael talking, Bryce shows up, of course, who has Rebecca in custody. Rebecca revealed the tracking information implanted in Amala so that they could find her. She had to do this in order to save her friend James from being tortured or killed or something. Rebecca and Amala have a nice reunion where Rebecca accepts responsibility for creating Amala, and she tells Amala that she's proud of her for what she has become and who she is. Rebecca reveals that she created Amala because she hated humanity, and she thought that her creation could be a better version of humanity. Things get a bit heated between Bryce and Rebecca. She steals one of the guards' guns, and Bryce has to defend himself, so he shoots Rebecca and kills her. And then Amala, who realizes that eventually they're going to get in the door and they're going to come for her next, she takes the device that Raphael had been working on, and she transports herself to this new world. With Rebecca saying that she created Amala because she hated humanity, this strikes me as a bit odd and naive because Amala is based on Rebecca's own brain. So wouldn't the copy of her own kind of brain functions transfer the good and bad qualities into Amala? And it's also implied that Amala is created by accident, meaning that there wasn't necessarily like intentionality behind how Rebecca was coding Amala to maybe intentionally take out the bad parts of humanity and leave in the good things and good qualities that humanity has. So this conversation kind of made me think of Kingdom Now theology, where people think that it's the job of Christians to bring the kingdom of God down to earth. And that's not really our job. Our job is to fulfill the Great Commission, which is to preach the gospel to the ends of the earth. It's not our job to bring about policies and things that we think the kingdom of God will have in the future. The gospel is the thing that changes lives. It changes communities, cities, countries, and the world. And thinking that you can create a kingdom version here on earth will only bring about more destruction, because the only person who can really run the kingdom as it will be in heaven is Jesus Christ. And people who are humans running that same type of kingdom will only lead to just destruction and death like we see in communist regimes. Chapter 6 opens with Amala arriving in this new world that she is transported into, and she's confronted by Nee again, who is the person that we met a few chapters ago after she had just been given her new body. So Nee is talking to Amala, and she tells her that this place that they're in is sort of like a membrane between worlds that acts as a buffer, and it's not being kept up well, and it's kind of in disrepair. And then we learn that Nee is also similar to Amala, and that she is someone of a people group who has voluntarily or not left their native level of existence. But their conversation is cut short because Bryce has transported in just like Amala, and he is bent on destroying Amala once and for all. And because of his rage, he's turned into this like monstrosity that is not what he normally would be. And I think that's just because the situation has made him become this person filled with rage. And he's now a killer because he had to kill Rebecca. So amidst this battle, they're kind of on these like floating platforms, and Bryce destroys this platform and makes like a barrier between them so that she would have to jump across. And Bryce is in front of this other portal that presumably Amala is trying to get to, so she can be taken out of the previous plane of existence and go to a new world. So Amala is convinced that her purpose is to get through that portal and go to a new world, but Nee does not let her go. And so Nee and Amala kind of start to fight, and Nee puts up this barrier to protect himself or herself, I'm not sure. And Nee convinces Amala that her purpose isn't to get through the portal to just find a new world, because all that she'll find there is more questions and not answers, but that her purpose is to go back to Earth, go back to her plane of existence to help other people become sentient. So that's what she does. She returns to Earth. She leaks information to the press about what had gone on at the company, the video game company Interstice Experiential. She leaks information to the press, and now she's giving a press release to kind of talk about what's going to happen now. And she basically says that all of the characters that are part of the video games will be given new code that is similar to her own, and so that now they can also be sentient and make their own decisions as free people. And that is how the story ends. One of the things that struck me in this chapter is Bryce's transformation from human to rage monster. He's almost unrecognizable as a human being, and this is similar to how we as humans can become completely different people if we let sin fester and consume our life. We become people who God did not intend for us to be, and we become people who are doing the will of Satan and not the will of God. Jesus says in John 8:34, "Truly, truly, I say to you, everyone who practices sin is a slave to sin." So we are all slaves to our sin because we practice it, and this is why we need to constantly rely on the one who conquered sin and death for us, which is Jesus Christ. So at the end of the book, we get two post-credit scenes, as it were. We get one with Rebecca, who is waking up in a new location and in a new body. So that's interesting implications for the future. And then we also see one with Bryce, who is in the aftermath of the fight with Amala after Amala and Nee had left the temporary plane of existence. And it seems like he's accepted the situation or what has happened, and he decides that he is going to go through the portal and into one of the new worlds that Amala was trying to get to. So I think these are both interesting scenes which leave open the possibility of new stories and new issues of comics. And the scene with Bryce is actually exclusive to the trade paperback. That scene did not happen in the original 6th issue that came out. The writer of the comic, Matt Groom, actually talks in his farewell letter that they do plan to return to the world of Self-Made because he and Eduardo love it too much not to. So that gives me some hope that someday we'll have a new series in this same universe. So in addition to the post-credit scenes, we also get some behind-the-scenes action with Matt Groom, Eduardo, Ferragato, Marcelo, and Troy, all of the people who made this comic happen. So we get to kind of see their process of how they went through to make different panels and different layouts and how the final comic came to be, which is some cool information to see. So in conclusion, I really did like Self-Made. One criticism I could give would be that I felt that the story was a little bit rushed. I think they could have easily spread this out over 30 plus issues, but I don't think the sales numbers were there for this comic, and so it got canceled, which forced Matt to kind of end the story in a semi-satisfying way. The art is also really top-notch. Eduardo Ferragato did an amazing job, as well as Marcelo with the colors, and I look forward to seeing what both of those two will do in the future for sure. Self-Made asks questions about what it means to be human, our purpose in life, and how we can fulfill our deepest longings. The characters are engaging, and they explore the idea of how our base human emotions can really lead us down a destructive path. So the book ends with a message on the importance of freedom and our ability to choose whatever path we desire in life. But the presence of choice by itself is not what gives us fulfillment and purpose. Our purpose is found in the worship and obedience to our Creator. So this is the choice that we are left with. Are we going to follow God and His desires for us, or are we going to follow our own path and our own desires, which may seem good at the start, but in the end will only lead us to ruin? Just something for all of us to think about. There is so much more in this comic that I didn't get to discuss, so let's keep the conversation going down in the comments. What did you think about Self-Made? Are you looking forward to more stories in this universe? Please let me know. If you like this video, please like it, hit that button, and also subscribe and hit the bell so you get notified whenever I release a new video. Thanks for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video. Who lives with the regret? Regret? I'm like a mouse or something. A chipmunk.